my background, but I was a biomedical researcher, and really actually have done a lot of switching or growth, or I don't know what you call it, but I started in biochemistry, human cytomegalovirus, and herpes virus, and did really basic, the role of the cytoskeleton in translation, transcription regulation. And then I was really naive and didn't know. I thought somebody had a slot for, she offered me a position. I thought she had money. She thought I had money. A week before I was supposed to start with her, we discovered that didn't exist. And so one of the people who had been on my broader committees offered me a role doing some of the techniques that I wanted to learn from her, but in macrophages role in atherosclerosis. So the postdoc was so successful, we went in for an R1 together. Then he leveraged a faculty position for me and transferred the grant, and then I had sustained funding. So I was at Wake Forest for 17 years, and then I got very interested on the faculty for 17 years, and then in pathology department, but did more basic macrophages role in atherosclerosis, a little bit of human subject. And then I got a master's in bioethics during my career, and so got really interested in the oversight of research, developed a code of ethics for life scientists, but then was sort of working myself out of a position in a pathology department doing basic research, and then got an NSF grant to develop using problem-based learning for professionalism and responsible conduct of research, but beyond just the compliance base, but how do you grow professionally, the different tensions. And then I ended up doing a AAAS Science Policy Fellowship back in 2005 and was placed at NIH in NIAID. I met Celia around that time through, I was doing some work on the Secretary's Advisory Committee for Human Research Protection, so oversight of research, human subjects. Then was at NIAID with AIDS research, of course, but in sort of in the office of the director, more oversight of research, as well as the science of science management, thinking about programs, not just individuals, career tracks. And then a job opened up at the National Institute on Minority Health and Health Disparities in more their analysis, reporting side. And I think, to me, the work in the epistemology of science and really going through a lot of different fields, and I think the background of actually bioethics or ethics, where you can crystallize what are key concepts, was a good leverage point for transdisciplinary research, that you're able to articulate what are the different framings, how does it work, and it's really good for moving fields of science forward. So when NIMHD was going through a lot of restructuring, I was able to move over into program, but have been participating in a lot of their visioning. And with that too, so now I'm maybe 2 years as a program officer, which our role is to help move the science forward, but also facilitate, people are in my portfolio, or grants or concepts are in my portfolio, and managing grants, and how do you push the science forward. And then also I have an area of interest of bioethics, and so I'm NIMHD's representative on a cross-coordinating committee that does bioethics. So I can sort of help you. Bioethics is one of these places that it doesn't have a clean fit in any of the national, like the national institutes. It's not their mission aimed at, except for Genome has a set-aside budget that they have to do LC, ethical, legal, social implications research, 5% of their budget. Alcohol has a small percentage that they have to do policy. And I think there's a small percentage somewhere else with a little bit of tobacco policy. Other than that, there really isn't set aside money for bioethics, and you have to compete against a biomedical culture, which is not.
They don't always love us.
They don't always understand you. They understand compliance.
Yeah.
So, but at the national, just a little bit of, how many of you know about NIMHD, or you're a loan repayment?
Yeah.
You're a loan repayment too.
Yeah.
Do you have loans?
Well, I got paid. My loans were paid by NHSC.
It's good. It's good.
In my clinical days.
That's good. It's wonderful. But so the National Minority Health and Health Disparities, it was an office, then it was a center, which as an office they didn't give grants. They had a little bit of money that they would play with other institutes around minority health and health disparities. Then a center, they did have some. And then with the Affordable Care Act, they became an institution. And so we both have an intramural now, research that is really starting to be built out under new. I could give you more backstory, but there were a number of setbacks with, like, two of the key leaders actually passed away within like 6 months of each other. But
Wow.
so then they're rebuilding the intramural program under a new director who started like 2.5 years ago, Dr. Perez Estable from UCSF. So anyways, NIMHD, our mandate is for minority health and health disparities research. But we are interested in the broader diversity as well as stimulating research capacity. I think before we did more things that were always set aside pockets of money and did a lot of infrastructure building, centers of excellence, and now under new leadership, the hope is to really build also our research investigator. At NIH, the populations that are defined as health disparities, and so is our mandate, are racial ethnic minorities, as well as socially, economically disadvantaged populations, underserved rural populations, and it'll be 2 years in October, sexual gender minorities. When Dr. Perez, we were doing a science visioning during the last 3 or 4 years, and I think he also was a council member of the National Institute of Aging, and they did a little bit of a framework of, mapping out where do things fit. And as we were working through it, I think we added an additional dimension of not just the domains of influence, like how do health disparities arise? Could it be the biology, the behavior, physical built environment, social cultural environment, also healthcare system, but also that we have to understand it through different levels of influence, more the social ecological framework where individuals, interpersonal, community, and societal. And so we like research, or we understand that a lot of research has been done at a single health determinant, but then that negates really the complexity of what's causing health disparities. And so we want to push that people consider more domains and or from more levels of influence as you think about, your research designs. So on our website then, we do have a place where there's a list of all the different kinds of things that we participate in. And I'll talk a little bit more about how NIH solicits research, because I think it is important, because I don't know how much, do you know the difference between like a program announcement or a FOA? Okay, it is important to read those things because it's sort of, there's a way to understand what is the thing that's driving it. How much should you invest in going after something versus, this is just a call for information. Maybe it's not for me. Also participate, we've expanded our participation to some of these standing fellowships and training.
Oh, you do 31s?
Yes. But yes, we do the F31s, and I would see supplements, which I didn't put here. We have more identified. The target range is from postdoc to junior faculty is where they want the diversity supplements. But we do. And then several of you could speak to the loan repayment. It actually, they used to have higher success rates because somebody was saying not as many people knew about it. And also we're shifting towards away from centers and even a little bit of loan repayment. We're still committed there. We didn't have more of the career development training, so we're sort of balancing to also allow for some of those activities. And there's only so much money, so you have to always think about how you're into there, but those are the And we did sign on to this, and so we have some questions. I'm the point of contact where we're interested, but really the things that are important for us is it always has to come back to one of our populations and health disparity or minority health. So the piece about the bioethics FOAs is it's really important to, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but knowing what the angle is, because there's 27 different institutes and centers at NIH, and they are mandated by Congress to do a certain type of science. But then, of course, then they articulate what that looks like. What are their priorities that they're going to do to cover their mission space? And so sometimes you think, why wouldn't this go to mental health? But, you know, like there are priorities that they identify. And so knowing those types of things are really key to being able to position your idea here on who would be a good fit at NIH for the science that you want to do. But there were just a number of different things, but in 2017 we did put out a notice, and a notice is different than a program announcement. It's just a way of communicating with the outside extramural community about what are the different priorities and who are the people to talk to if you're interested in this. They didn't do a program announcement for a variety of reasons that maybe are beyond this talk. But it does highlight some different areas of bioethics. Another large area that is new, and they are funding research, is for the BRAIN initiative. And so they also have a working group that's looking at the ethical issues and prioritizing with the ethical areas. I don't know if you're interested in brain research, but it's a hot area right now. There really are, to me, some very, like interesting questions. And especially when you start to think about, how different populations would think. Like we always look monolithically, but we know, there's going to be some major differences. Fogarty also has historically had a presence in bioethics, but their priority has really circled around capacity to do research in an international setting. Because if you get U.S. monies, you have to use the U.S. rules. And then you're going into different countries. And 20 years ago, the different countries didn't have the infrastructure, and it was a big problem. But so their priority is to train people to do more, even international researchers, which they're the odd place. So the piece about the bioethics FOAs is it's really important to, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but knowing what the angle is, because there's 27 different institutes and centers at NIH, and they are mandated by Congress to do a certain type of science. But then, of course, then they articulate what that looks like. What are their priorities that they're going to do to cover their mission space? And so sometimes you think, why wouldn't this go to mental health? But, there are priorities that they identify. And so knowing those types of things are really key to being able to position your idea here on who would be a good fit at NIH for the science that you want to do. But there were just a number of different things, but in 2017, we did put out a notice, and a notice is different than a program announcement. It's just a way of communicating with the outside extramural community about what are the different priorities and who are the people to talk to if you're interested in this. They didn't do a program announcement for a variety of reasons that maybe are beyond this talk. But it does highlight some different areas of bioethics. Another large area that is new, and they are funding research, is for the BRAIN initiative. And so they also have a working group that's looking at the ethical issues and prioritizing with the ethical areas. I don't know if you're interested in brain research, but it's a hot area right now. There really are, to me, some very, like interesting questions. And especially when you start to think about, how different populations would think. We always look monolithically, but we know, there's going to be some major differences. Fogarty also has historically had a presence in bioethics, but their priority has really circled around capacity to do research in an international setting. Because if you get U.S. monies, you have to use the U.S. rules. And then you're going into different countries. And 20 years ago, the different countries didn't have the infrastructure, and it was a big problem. But so their priority is to train people to do more, even international researchers, which they're the odd place awareness. The Office of the Extramural Research, how many of you been on that site? And maybe you'll recognize it by this next picture. But it's a great tool. It has a lot of information and tutorials about, the one how it works, what assignments are, and it's complicated. And the part that one of the program officers, when I said I was coming here, I asked for her advice, and she said, you should tell them that they have to keep asking questions, and that some of their more senior established faculty may actually not know what the new rules are or what the new trends are, because things are constantly being updated. So keep on asking. It is complicated. I'm going to go back. The Office of Extramural Research is a great, it also is the entry point that you can look for these different funding opportunity announcements, where they are. And then again, there's different types, we'll talk about them in a minute, of how NIH asks for money. But it also gives information about the types of grants on the grant process. There's also something that I'll show you really quickly is what's important is first you have to find who's going to be interested in supporting it, what would be a good assignment for you for one of the institutes based on the science that you want. But the other important thing is who's going to review it. So it's really crucial to understand that each of the review things come out of different scientific lenses, and they're going to focus and prioritize or exclude, things in your research. So what is the most important part of your research that you want it reviewed on? Because sometimes you guys are in transdisciplinary aspects. So like you were talking about, do I want AIDS researchers to do the ethics part? Probably not, because if they're really into the newest mechanism right now, yours may be seen as less scientifically important. So knowing and identifying within your project what's the key thing that you really want the best type of review on. And then how many of you have used the NIH Reporter? Everybody. So that's great. So it's a phenomenal thing, and maybe it'll be rehashing, but sort of how to use the tool to find out. To me, it's a great way for you to find out who are your peers in the scientific community, and being funded at NIH. What could be the potential institutes or centers that are interested in your research, and who the key program officers are. And then also, how did they get supported? Because that's going to help you understand sometimes, like, wow, like the same project. Well, then you look and, oh, they came in on a RFA, it was one-time money, there's no more money for that. You know what I mean? It's depressing, but it also could save you time. So, okay, this is the tool for OER. This is the search tool for the FOAs. And I don't know, some offices of research actually push these. This is another piece that I knew this at Wake Forest when I was there. They were building out that capacity, and so I let someone in the grants office or the office of research, we had a conversation. I don't even know how it happened, but they started to learn what kinds of areas of grants that I was interested in. They're on these listservs that comes, and they started pushing me all of these funding opportunities. So, I didn't always catch stuff. So again, at NIH, we have what's called unsolicited research. In other words, we fund research, and so we have these parent announcements are the standards ways that we package the support. R21, 2 years, 250K, the R01, 500K, 3 to 5 years. Some institutes only allow 4. You have to know. 3 times a year, standard receipt dates, age dates too, and they're on this different cycle. And here then, any idea can come in, and then you'll be assigned an institute based on their mission space and what your research interests are. You can also be assigned to more than one institute, and funding is challenging. Some institutions have insane pay lines, so sometimes there's some strategy in getting a couple, like a secondary assignment with an institute that may have a more generous pay line. Maybe you want to get an NHLBI, you don't, but you have secondary to NIMHD. This year we have a better pay line. Actually, this year we don't, but last year we did. And so then, they might pick you up. Or split the funding after. You never know this before, but there might be something there later. Then the other part are the solicited, which are the areas where NIH has identified a priority area. It can be a program announcement, and so then that still has usually the 3 standard receipt dates, and it can be 2 or 3 years that they're saying it's more we're interested in this, we're communicating to the community, this is a research priority, but there's no money set aside, but they're just trying to use it more as a vehicle to alert the community we still are interested in this area. So then that means that you have to be competitive against all of the things that come into that particular institute. The PAR, here, something there is either there's a specific receipt, it might be once a year, and typically it also will have either additional review criteria, like we did a sleep disparities. So we said we wanted to see transdisciplinary teams, we wanted to see the basic sleep mechanisms, and we wanted to see health disparity expertise. And so we were reviewing on that you actually blended it. And then there we were able to set a special review panel that could then push, because we were finding, like the health disparity stuff that would go to a sleep panel didn't do well. And the sleep in health disparities panels, they don't do, in some of the key health disparity panels, they don't like biological biospecimens. They do more behavioral, social, so they didn't do well. So we needed a review panel. We didn't have money, but we still are committed to try to get that up and going, so we're going to look for the best ones to fund. Then there is a program announcement that has still is research reviewed by the Centers of Scientific Review, but there are set-aside funds. So when there are set-aside funds, those are the ones that sometimes it's worth looking at, because most of the time, not all, they have slightly better pay lines, because the Institute has said, like is saying, like we feel like this is an important area that's under-researched. We want to stimulate it. So we're going to try to spend this money. It doesn't, like if they don't get meritorious projects, they won't spend it. And sometimes they'll spend more than they said if they find something really, really good, and they may, go around the tin cup to some of the other institutes to say, will you partner with us? But RFAs then often, if they have like a two-letter initial, like ours is MD or HL or before the numbers, then typically that institute, they're going to be the ones who do the review. They have their own review. They don't use CSR. And there the thinking is they really know how they want the angle of science to be looked at. And they'll actually convene the review panel so that they bring the expertise that they think is essential to get the kind of science that they need. So then it's very important to really look at the RFA and to contact the program officers on those to understand what really is the bent that they're going. Sometimes in these, an institution will have a workshop like a year or two before. Also, you can, these different funding requests would have had to go through an NIH council in the parent, where a program officer has to pitch the concept of the science that they want. So I don't know, how many of you have ever listened to a council meeting? But if it really is an area that you think is important, it's coming out as an RFA, there probably was a concept. You can Google that institute, and you can, now all of the council meetings are video archived. You can listen to the discussion of how was it pitched. They don't give the specifics of what, is it an R01 or R21, but they usually talk about the science that they want to generate. And you also hear what the council members say about it. Oh, we think this is a priority, or this is the angle that's really the priority. And those kinds of things then help you shape your arguments to increase in the relevance for your research. And then also notices. And notices are just ways of stimulating interest to the institute. Any questions on that? You already all knew that.
We had to go over this and do like mock stuff as a postdoc. So
It's good. It's one. It's the assisted referral tool. So I actually put in some stuff, barriers and motivators to research, participating with youth.
Well, that's mine.
I did. I used some of you guys' stuff to do some of the searches. So then I said, okay, you can put in like the aims or a little bit of the story in the text, and then it does, it's like, I don't know the algorithms it uses, but it says then what are likely study sections. To different groups. Okay, so then everybody's used Reporter, and you see this different. So I won't belabor this. Of course, you can pick what year you're looking for, put in information about the investigator, text searches, project details if you know a specific project. Because when you have a project, there's a like function. So if you have a project that you really think, oh, this overlaps, well, then you can search on that project to see what else is like it that's been funded at NIH. Other filters. See. So here they had this, a demo, that somebody put in some keywords of the text search, and then they also picked our institute, and then they got a list of different projects. And then the nice thing is, in any project, you can go in and you can see, the project aims, public relevance, and the publications that were coming out of there. Okay. Now, I think this is another feature. How many of you use the matchmaker feature? It's newer, but it's great. Okay, because it gets at this thing. What you want to do in the art of getting funded is find who is jazzed up about your research ideas. And so then I did this one on who was doing the biomedical trust and biospecimen consent. The minorities, I put some keywords. And then what it does, then you can either look at what are the projects that overlap, or who are the program officers. And then if you drill in, there are different reasons why something gets in here. You know, like the one thing I used to do, responsible conduct of research. Well, almost every training aspect it would start flagging. But you can narrow the searches. I want it in just the specific aims, or I want it in the title, or, you know, so there are ways that you can triage to try to get a better match. Or if you know if there's somebody that's doing the kind of research that you want to do and you want to get funded, then you can do a like and then find a portfolio. And so then on this, you referenced Gail Henderson on one of your research on an area for cure, and so I was like, oh, well, let me look. Does she have any current funding? And she does. A very interesting overlap with what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then, of course, then she's already published, so I was like, oh, you know, this is a nice way. Oh, I think this was, I used similar projects, see up at the top.
Oh.
So this was the parent, and then I tapped into that project, and then I said, all right, what's similar at NIH that's funding this type of research? And then it's a good start, and so you can see, do you know how to read a grant number?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the type, you know, 1 or 2 is that it's a competitive, verse 5 means it's a continuation, and then the type R01, and then the institute, and then you know the year, and then like one of these ones that they did was a supplement, the S.
Oh, that's Brendan's. Brendan Brown, I think, has a supplement with NEAR, the first one.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yep. So then you get a sense of how is this research getting funded? What are the different strategies people are using, as well as potential for context. You know, like that you say, hey, you know, I'm really interested in your research, or you look at their publication record, or, you know, like it just gives you a sense, and to me it's situational awareness. But then the other information that you can look at, well, here are the publications. But the other important information is this other page on the detail. And what it does here are 2 pieces that I think you should know, is who was the program official and how did it get funded. And so again, this one, Liza Dawson, she is someone who's interested in AIDS and ethics, so she's a good program officer if you're interested in AIDS and ethics. Again, they may not be able to fund it, but she may know of things that are happening. Oh, you should know about this large trial, you know, network, and they've got pilots, and right now they're jazzed up about what you're doing. You know, so, you know, there are multiple. They should know about other resources, and that's why you begin asking questions and try to find the people who have the overlap with you. But then it is important to know how it got funded, because, you know, some of the ethics, bioethics research doesn't do well in study sections, or really has a hard time competing. If it gets scored and it comes up with, you know, a 15 percentile, and you're at NHLBI that pays to the 9 percentile, you're going to have a hard time competing. And so just having a sense of, you know, like, what's my strategy in here too, or so how do you position your interest for success? And I think you need to start paying attention to the scientific priorities of the key institutes that are going to be interested in your angle, as well as really knowing how to position, like the conversation you had about where you're going to publish. Who's your field? Who do you want to read it? What meeting should I be presenting it at? I think that's another strategy, is that, you know, who do you want to read be your reviewers on it. Well, if you're going to be putting in a grant in, like it is good to present your research at some key research communities that are going to have some of the people who are going to be reviewing your grant, because they're going to catch the buzz about, oh wow, that was a great, research pilot project. That rings a bell somehow because I saw it. It's always good to understand where you fit in the field, and then really spending time to educate your program officer. We have a lot of, for me, I have to be a generalist, although then I have specific areas. Other institutes sometimes have very narrow portfolios, but you have to be able to articulate the importance and timeliness of your research idea. Why is it a scientific? And then really articulate what the scientific premise is and how your research will advance the field. And the piece for health disparities research and bioethics sometimes is those review panels can be looking at an AIDS, they can be looking at it online, they can be looking at sexual gender minority, they can be looking at all kinds of research. So you have to understand that in some fields where the review panel, their range of research interests is like this versus yours is like the room, it's going to affect how people, they're not going to know all the nuances or why your methods that you chose are the best. Mm-hmm. You have to take the time to sort of demonstrate that you get and explain for people who may not be experts. You can't go from A to C, where in other fields where everybody in the room has your same background, you can go to A to C. They'll jump with you. But those other panels, they won't jump. And so then they'll assume that you don't know what you're doing because they're lost. And anyways, it's very important to be able to articulate why what you're doing is so timely and will advance the science, not just important to do, and understand what is persuasive for that community. So again, it's good to be understandable beyond your expertise, especially in these broader panels. And then prioritize the most important aspect of the science for your reviews. Ask advice, ask a lot of different people, because I'm going to be able to give you intel from the one angle, but then Liza might be a great person for the AIDS to get intel from another angle. I mean, she's got a perspective, right? And so then you still might, this program officer and NIMH, they may be good for this angle. And then, later in your career, you may find that angle is, going to be the area that you really want to go, but right now you want to go for this. And I would say the most important thing about getting funded is that you keep on trying. About half of the people, I did an analysis for NIAID on people, not projects, over the year. We had about 500 new investigators every year, and every year half of them never came back again the next year. And so, but we still had 500 the next year. So the number one thing is you have to keep on applying and not take it personally. Try to understand the reason why it didn't fit, or was I in the wrong review panel that wasn't able to judge the science that I want judged. It happens, especially in the crossover fields that you guys have. Was it I still didn't articulate it clearly? Maybe I could have made a stronger case. Was it I'm too brilliant too early? They don't understand me. And that's not, sometimes people who are doing really, really frontier stuff, it takes them a little while to actually educate other people to be able to understand that you really do know what you're saying, if it's too transformative. But still then, the piece is you have to take the time to persuade them that you're right. And again, maybe that means then you have to write an article first. to persuade and get that in there. So, well, that's all I had to say.